Ritu Kumari of CISF, chairperson of the committee constituted by the UGC for the development of women's studies in Indian universities and colleges, chairperson of UGC assessment team for awarding 1 to 12B status to Jyoti Vidyapith Women's University Jaipur, member of governing council of Inter University Center for Teachers Education set up by the UGC at BHU Varanasi, chairperson of the UGC assessment team for awarding fresh autonomous status to Zain Civil Institute of Education, Mumbai, chairperson UGC expert team to consider the action plan submitted by the Institute of Advanced Studies in Education, deemed to be University, Sardashar, Rajasthan. Now, this is in a very short, brief detail of Madam, and from our interactions with Madam. Madam is a very simple person with all these renowned activities and positions. I think it is with the support of our Vice Chancellor and Professor Asha Shukla Madam that Department of Women Studies and Dr. Kamalavini and me have been able to put forth this program. So I welcome all the eminent panelists who have accepted to share their views today. I welcome all the eminent persons or the professors and other participants from our university and from Ambedkar University who have joined here to enrich their knowledge. We welcome you all and looking forward to a fruitful interaction and learning. Thank you. Dr. Kamalavini?
Yes, ma'am. Over to ma'am now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor P. Kaliraj, Bhartiyar University, Coimbatore, Dr. Janita Rosaline, Chairperson of today international webinar, our friends, keynote speaker, Dr. P.M. Nair from Indian Police Foundation, Senior IPS, Madam Bhamati Bala Subramaniam, ISN former member of the Central Administration Tribunal, Chennai, Professor K. Mani Meklai, former Vice Chancellor and presently Director and Head Women's Studies, Algappa University, Karikudi, Whitney Archer from USA, Dr. Jaya Fukan from Barkatullah University, Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh, and last, Miss George from UAE. This program is jointly organizing. We are organizing by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University of Social Sciences and by the Department of Women's Studies, Bhartiyar University, Coimbatore, in collaboration with UGC. So, dear friends, first of all, I want to mention Dr. Kamalavini, Dr. Jaya Fukan, and Dr. Manoj Gupta. Under the sincere leadership of Professor Rosaline, they make so much efforts for the grand success of this international webinar today and tomorrow. I wish to discuss few things on human rights and human trafficking in related to gender perspective. My friend Dr. Manoj Gupta is presenting my slides. So, for this August gathering, what is sex and gender? Simply, sex refers to the biological characteristics of men and women, and gender refers to the social differences between men and women that are learned, changeable over the time. Because I am discussing this particular issue with the gender perspective, so I want to specifically characteristically mention this sex and gender difference. Next, please. Sex, biological, natural, born with, given, constant, cannot be changed, but gender, socially constructed, not born with, changeable. Next. These are the sex roles and gender roles. Sex roles, same in all human societies, they are universal, and gender roles may differ from society to society. For example, it is only women who give birth to the children. Only men can supply sperm. Do not change with changing society. Next, please. So, socialization of gender roles. Gender socializations begin at the moment a child is born from the simple question, is it a boy or a girl? These are few agencies of socialization. We learn our gender roles by agencies of socialization, which are the teacher of society. The main agencies of these are family, peer group, schools, and the media. Gender differences result from the socialization process, especially during our childhood and adolescence. Next, please. These are few gender stereotypes. Traditionally, men are supposed to be the financial provider, independent, earn a living to support their families. They are to be aggressive and in charge, career focused, and hold his emotions in check. Traditionally, the female stereotype's role is to marry and have children. Women belong to home, cooking, cleaning, and caring of children. She is also put her family welfare before her own. Be loving, compassionate, caring, nurturing, and sympathetic also. These sort of stereotypes can prove harmful. They can stifle individual expression and creativity as well as hinder personal and professional growth. Gender stereotypes such as these provide in society today and these create many myths. Next, please. What is human rights? Human rights are rights inherent to all human beings, regardless of race, sex, nationality, language, religion, or any other status. Human rights includes the right to life and liberty, freedom, freedom of opinion and expression, the right to work and education, and many more. Everyone is entitled to these rights without any discrimination. Next, please. Trafficking and human rights violation. Various human rights violations occur at different stages of the trafficking cycle, including unaccessible rights such as the rights to life, liberty, and security, the right to freedom of movement, and the right not to be subjected to torture and or crucial, inhuman, regarding treatment or punishment. A human rights approach to trafficking requires an acknowledgement that trafficking is first and foremost a violation of human rights. All those involved with anti trafficking efforts should integrate human rights into their analysis of the problem and into their responses. This approach requires us to consider at each and every stage the impact that a law, policy, practice, or measure may have on persons who have been trafficked and persons who are vulnerable to being trafficked. It means rejecting responses that compromise rights and freedoms. A human rights approach to trafficking means putting victims at the center of anti trafficking policies by the protection of their rights. By taking such an approach, where the person is trafficked for sex work or another form of forced labor, becomes irrelevant because the victim's rights are protected regardless of why they have been trafficked. Next, please. A core component of human rights approach is ensuring equal protection to all victims of trafficking, regardless of their gender, age, or field of work. All victims are entitled to equal access to aid mechanism, protection, and justice, as well as the choice to access these services in the way that they choose so as not to have their agency compromised. Therefore, policy responses must take into consideration the often gendered nature of trafficking and sufficiently compensate for any gender based discrimination in terms of access to aid and justice, in addition to actively ensuring these rights to trafficking victims. Other anti trafficking policies involving criminal prosecutions and migration regulation must not compromise human rights to the process. Next, please. Dr. Manoj, next, please. Okay. Human trafficking is a multi-dimensional issue. Trading in human beings is one of the most serious forms of the violation of human rights. Commercial sexual exploitation and non sex based exploitation is a transnational and complex challenge, and it is an organized criminal activity. Trafficking clearly violates the fundamental rights to life with dignity. Illiteracy, poverty, class crashes, natural calamities, political and ethnic unrest, migration across national borders, increased vulnerabilities, and social exploitation of marginalized groups. Trafficking being paramount on that list. Next. It is the definitional debate. I want to simply quote one only. The complexity of trafficking, the links with Israel issues such as commercial sex work and exploitation of children and the politics of migration management have meant that there is much contention over the definition of trafficking and the types of policies and programming that would effectively combat this serious crime and effort to basic human rights. Asian Development Bank 2009. Next, please. Manoj, next, please. Human trafficking according to UN Protocol. Article 3 continues exploitation shall include at a minimum the exploitation of the prostitution of others or other forms of sexual exploitations, forced labor or services, slavery or practices similar to slavery, substitute, or the removal of organs. In essence, the definition found in the protocol can be broken down into the three principal components of the offenses. First, the act, second, the method, and third, the purpose. All three elements must be present for a situation to be officially recognized as trafficking. What is the UN Protocol on Trafficking in Children? The protocol also establishes special regulations for trafficking in children. Individuals under 18 years of age, the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of a child for the purpose of exploitation shall be considered trafficking in persons, even if this does not involve any of the means set forth in subparagraph A of this article. That is, the children transport for exploitative work are considered trafficking victims, where or not they have been deceived. Next, please. These are more definitions. Next, please. These are the forms of human trafficking, including child trafficking, forced labor, bonded labor, debt bondage among migrant laborers, inventory, domestic servitude, forced child labor, child soldiers, sex trafficking, false marriages, child sex trafficking and related abusers, commercial sexual exploitation of children, child sex tourism, entertainment, sports, camel jockey, film and video industries, illegal activities, wagging, organ trade, drug peddling, and smuggling. Next, please. It is statics. It is the global scenario of statics, but always it changed. In the field of student, in the field of working in the human trafficking, I think it always changed. So no permanent data is here. Human trafficking in India. Next, please. According to the US State Department, India is both a source and transit country for trafficking, as well as one of the most popular trafficking destinations in South Asia. US Department of State 2000 Trafficking in Persons report. It is estimated that 10% of India trafficking in person is international while 90% is domestic. India is poisonous hub of human trafficking. Next. These are also the figures of India. So I'm not going to quote it. So next please. Process and pattern of human trafficking. Human trafficking is increasingly recognized as complex process and the factors an individual vulnerable that make an individual vulnerable to being trafficked are multifaceted. It involves a series of episodes for the trafficked person, which might start with the desire or need to leave their home, community, or migrate, followed by an encounter with a trafficker leading to deception and to highly harmful and exploitative working situations. For others, it might start with family members handling over responsibility for their safety and well being to others known to them and then end up trafficked by a third set of actors. So these are the process of trafficking: recruitment, transportation, transfer or reception of people by force or threat, sale, payment or receipt of money, use of threat or force and abuse of power, exploitation. Every interval is required at each step of the process. Modes. Traffickers throughout South Asia lure their victims by means of attractive promises such as high paying jobs, livelihood and employment options, prosperity and prudently marriages. Parents and family members are also deceived by false marriages and deception. Child trafficking. Child trafficking, unlike many other issues, is found in both developed and developing nations. Trafficked children are used for prostitution, forced into marriage, illegally adopted, used as cheap or unpaid labor, used for sport and organ harvesting. Some children are recruited into armed groups also. Trafficking exposes children to violence, abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Trafficking is one of the hardest crimes to track and investigate, hence, data is hard to obtain. The latest figures estimate that 1.2 million children are trafficked worldwide every year. Child prostitution has the highest supply of trafficked children. Next, please. Almost 80% of all worldwide trafficking is for sexual exploitation. Among the reams of material or trafficking in India, there is a staggering government statistics that a child goes missing somewhere in the country every 8 minutes. Almost 35,000 children were officially reported missing in 2011, although most missing children are trafficked into commercial sex work. Next, please. Root cause of trafficking, supply and demand side. Root causes, poverty and globalization. Primary cause, poverty. Secondary cause, economic deprivation, injustice, social inequality, lack of employment opportunities, patriarchal culture, discrimination and marginalization of girl child and women, low level of education and general awareness. Root cause of trafficking, supply side is harmful cultural attitudes, socio-cultural norms, traditional religious and cultural practices, political uprisings of child, impact of globalization on livelihoods through the removal of traditional jobs, caste, tribe marginalization, the ableist street children, vulnerability of women and children to trafficking due to conflict, disasters. Social attitude, culture and practices. Children who are not in school, come from poor families, are employed in low skilled occupations, are from marginalized groups of society, are highly vulnerable to trafficking. Child labor is increasing to meet the growing demands of globalization, low cost labor. Employees opt for children because they are uncomplaining, easily controlled, desperate, responsible. Next. Gender. Gender discrimination and girl child trafficking. Women and girls are the main victims, trafficked for purpose of prostitution, forced marriages, and domestic work. Gender discrimination is prevalent throughout India, and sexual abuse of women in many parts of the country is widespread. In addition to trafficking for prostitution, girls and women are bought and sold into forced marriages in areas where there is a deficit of women. Trafficking of children and women is a plague of the poor. According to India's National Human Rights Commission, the vast majority of victims belong to socially deprived sections of society. Next, please. Caste and tribe. These numbers demonstrate that trafficking is negatively skewed towards historically disadvantaged groups. Old customs and tradition reinforced gender discrimination based on caste and ethnicity. The most visible and common example is the Devdasi tradition in Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, in which parents from the scheduled tribe daughter marry their daughter before puberty to a deity or temple where they are forced to provide sexual service to upper caste community members. Given the girl's status as minors, this is a form of trafficking. Thus, marginalization of women is a major contributing factor to trafficking. The fact that many families and communities perpetuate and institutionalize the act of trafficking has hindered anti-tip efforts. Gender-based social practices have led parents to be persuaded by the traffickers under false pretext of marriage without a dowry. Sweet sex ratio is the reason for false marriages involving girl child. A study by National Commission for Women found that 62% of women is in commercial sex work are from SC and 30% from STs. In the post-conflict disaster period, marginalized communities with low savings, few skills, and limited mobility become easy prey for trafficking. Orissa cycles, fronts in Bihar and West Bengal, Next Life movement in Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh have contributed to increase in trafficking. Main sufferers are women and children. With a backdrop of poor governance and scarce government services, the absence of an effective legal framework and tracks with inclusion of vulnerable groups from basic social and economic service to enable an environmental conducive for trafficking. In This is the root causes of trafficking demand side, increased sex tourism in India, in India's major tourist destination. Economic booms that have led to increased demand for cheap labor. Subsequently, increased levels of migrant workers who far from home, mostly male heavy demand for sex workers. Next, please. So, what is the significant move to combat trafficking? The UN protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in the person, especially women and children, is the first attempt to address trafficking in persons in a comprehensive manner. The adoption by the SARC. Another international development has been the Trafficking in Persons report. The report is based on the assessment of the government and civil society action in each country to combat trafficking. The government prohibits some forms of trafficking for commercial sexual exploitation through the Immoral Trafficking Prevention Act, prescribed penalties under the IPA. India also provides bonded and forced labor through the bonded labor, the Child Labor Provision and Regulation Act of 1986 and the Juvenile Justice Act of 1986. Indian authorities also use Section 366A and 372 of the Indian Penal Code prohibiting kidnapping and selling minors into prostitution. The Ministry of Women and Child Development remains the central government's coordination of anti-trafficking policies and programs. Next, please. Extensive community participation, awareness campaign, and advocacy are crucial to addressing trafficking. Economic aspects like poverty, lack of opportunities, and breakdown of livelihood options are factors which needed to be addressed. To address the issues of livelihood, options, and opportunities while focusing on efforts of to eradicate poverty, the line between legal migration for better livelihood options set against illegal migration bordering on trafficking and movement for trafficking persist in getting more and more burned. To deal not just with the actual act of trafficking but recognize and address the causal factors and more critically than the conditions and the circumstances. Working partnership between the police, NGOs, and community. Professor P.M. Nair and Madam Bhavati Bala Subramaniam is here. They are working a lot for in this sector. Prevention is best achieved by community policy. Skill building, production of training manual for counselors, facilitating exchange training program amongst NGOs to promote regional learning, mapping of source and transit area and destination, development of existing statistics, good practices of anti-trafficking initiatives should be documented. Thank you. So I trust and I hope our senior resource person, just like Dr. P.M. Nair, just Bhamati Valam Subramanyam, and from our international experts, will give a line to do more for this particular very sensitive issue of the human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was an excellent and vibrant presentation with a lot of information. Now I take this opportunity to introduce Dr. P.M. Nair, sir. Dr. P.M. Nair is a senior official with the Indian Police Service since 1978. He has held several positions of responsibility in the state of Bihar, addressing the issues of law and order, crime prevention, crime reduction, management, managing mega events, community policing, etc. Due to his proactive work, he has endeared himself with the people of Bihar as a friend in need. Dr. Nair has served CBI for a decade, handling several crimes of international and national importance like assassination of Rajiv Gandhi, the international arms smuggling in Purulia, several organized crimes affecting national security, corruption crimes against senior officials and political personalities, as well as several crimes against women and children, including those of international human trafficking. The government of India has awarded him with the Indian Police Medal for meritorious service in 1995 and with President of India, India's Medal for the distinguished service in 2005, the highest decoration to the police officer in India. He has won many as 8 commendations discs of the police chief in span of 7 years from 2005 to 2012, besides several commendation and appreciation from Supreme Court of India and other judicial authorities. Dr. Nair is an expert in the field of anti-human trafficking, not only in India but also in international review. He has been recognized as an expert on the subject by United Nations. He set up the first anti-human trafficking unit in India in the year 2007, followed by 8 more in different parts of the country. He is known as the father of anti-human trafficking unit in India. He is also known as crusader of human rights, especially for women and children rights. Dr. Nayar's contribution in the field of anti-human trafficking span over 3 decades are immense and unparalleled. He is credited with the several innovations and out-of-box initiatives in preventing human trafficking by empowering the vulnerable population and by the capacity building of various stakeholders fighting human trafficking. Dr. P.M. Nair has served UN as a project coordinator, anti-human trafficking at Regional Office of UN Office of Drugs and Crime at New Delhi. He has trained more than 15,000 personnel of various stakeholders, including police, judicials, NGOs, media, etc., on anti-human trafficking, set up anti-human trafficking cells in India, and brought out several excellent resource materials in addressing the issues concerned with women's rights and child rights. He has brought out documentary film for training purpose on human trafficking involving 3 top Bollywood stars. He has also started a certificate course on anti-human trafficking in IGNO, which is the unique initiative of its kind anywhere in the world. He is also conferred with MHA's Outstanding Achievement Award in the field of anti-human trafficking for the year 2011. Dr. Nair has worked with the National Human Rights Commission as a nodal officer and has carried out action research on trafficking in women and children in India. He was the principal research investigator in the project. The report has been published by Orient Longman in 2005. Dr. Nair has authored 3 books: Combating Organized Crime, published in 2012, and The Handbook for Police in Addressing Trafficking of Women and Child, published in 2005. His latest book, on human trafficking dimensions, challenges in response, was released in 2010 by the Union Home Minister of India. Dr. Nair holds a master's degree in sociology, a degree in law, and PhD in victimology. He has rare distinction of having graduated from 2 premier and prestigious institutions of excellence in the world: FBI National Academy, USA, and National Defense College, New Delhi. Presently, he is working with the Government of India as the Director General of National Disaster Response Force, as well as the Director General of Civil Defense. We are happy to have such an eminent personality among us. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Namaste. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Audibility is good, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Audible.
Namaskar, Professor Asha Shukla. Pranam. And grateful to all the distinguished vice chancellors. I understand Professor Kalida is also here. Dr. Rosalind, Professor Kamalavani. Thank you for the introduction. A little obsolete. I moved out of NDR long back. Well, we'll take it forward. That's more important. I'll confine myself to 25 minutes, which are allotted to me. And I'll also focus on the emerging dimension and response to human trafficking in India. That's exactly the focus I want to touch upon. Ladies and gentlemen, when we speak about human trafficking, the dimension used to be always used to think was for sex trafficking or labor trafficking or organ trade. Now, under the law 370 IPC Indian Penal Code, which has come in 2013, we have added a new dimension called slavery and servitude. What is slavery and servitude has not been defined. That you can define, we can define, depending on the scenario. If a child is brought from, 10 children have been brought from Bihar to Salem in Tamil Nadu, who are working in a zeri factory, we may think it is child labor. But the fact is that children's hands are asked to put in acid and they lost their nails. Child Lane rescued the children and all the children have lost their nails. I'm talking about something that happened during COVID time. They have been made slaves. So that is human trafficking. So we have to redefine the whole issue of human trafficking from the new perspective. mercifully it has been brought into the law also. Therefore, whatever scenario we see today on the ground, most of the crimes will fall under this definition of human trafficking. That's something very important all of us have to realize. Secondly, the issue of missing children. We may think that children have gone missing, but children have not gone missing. Children are made to go missing. The लड़की भागी आती है नहीं है, लड़की को भागा जाता है. That means basically saying that the girl is not being the girl doesn't run away, the girl is made to run away. As of now, something around 2.5 lakh means 2.5 lakh population children are reported missing every year. Persons are reported missing, of which 1.1 lakh are means 110,000 are children. In a year, if you have 110,000 children approximately going missing, 40,000 of them remain untraced. The NHRC study has brought out evidence to establish that the children who remain untraced have been trafficked. Now, that's a long story, but evidence have come even last year also, how the children remained missing have been traced. And SSP in Ghaziabad traced so many children, they are all reported missing, but all of them have been trafficked. And another young person in Maharashtra traced them, and they found all were reported missing, but they have been trafficked. So a huge dimension of a trafficking with a linkage of missing children who are remaining untraced. Now coming to the COVID scenario, especially that's what I should be addressing today. Let me list out a few interesting evidence. Everything should be evidence-based, makes more sense. When the COVID and post-COVID, the new normal has come, the new abnormal has also come to stay. We have a new normal which has come to stay, and now the new abnormal also has come to stay. Unfortunately, that's a part. Why so? Let me give examples. Number one, an agency in Delhi undertook a study of how many people go into the net, how many people in India go into the net and search for child pornography. Not all over India, they took only 100 cities in India, and they found in a matter of 2 months' time, 5 million people have gone in the net looking for child pornography. 2 months' time, from 100 cities in India, 5 million people have gone in the net looking for child pornography. What does it mean? Number one, child pornography is available. Number two, child pornography is in demand. Number three, child pornographers are producing child pornography. Number four, the children are not safe at home because they are not shooting the films in a beach or open hotels or somewhere. They are all doing it at home. Children are not safe at home. And number five, these child pornographers are making huge profits. And last but not the least, when the COVID scenario breaks out, these child pornographers are coming to open, and today they are hiding behind the camera and hiding behind the cell phones. That means that even the cell phones and internet has been taken over by the pornographers, by the traffickers. Ladies and gentlemen, this also shows that the traffickers have come to the bedroom. The elephant is in the bedroom. If you are not alert, if you are not awake, if you are not working now, our children, our women are going to be in serious danger. So let's take this opportunity by the esteemed two universities as an important action point. Please take it forward, and let's take it forward as a mission, and then only we can do something to curtail, not prevent, something to curtail this ongoing menace. Another interesting study is about the recent the study data of the child sex abuse in Kerala. Kerala is a state where reporting is generally very good. Very good. If some states like I don't want to mention state in the heartland, if 10% crimes are reported, Kerala 90% would be reported. That's the difference. There, child sexual abuse has gone 3 times over during the COVID time. West Bengal, domestic violence has gone 3 times over. Tamil Nadu, child marriage has gone 3 times over. What does all this indicate? Now, the child trafficking behind adoption racket. This is a study recently by the media, recently by an agency, which was brought out to the media only last week. 9,300 children have lost their parents during the COVID time. During a matter of 1 year, a report by the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights to the Supreme Court of India. Can happen, but what happens to the children? What happens to children who are 9,300 children who have become abandoned? Number two, there are many parents who cannot afford to look after children. For them, it is more than abandonment. That number nobody knows. It's a huge dimension where the children have become highly vulnerable. Highly vulnerable. Another interesting thing is 41 techies, technical persons, all engineers, all youth were arrested by the Kerala police last month. You know why? They have conducted a raid in 596 locations and found they were abusing children, pornography of children being developed, and the children were the age group 5 to 16. 5 to 16, the age group has gone down. The children of this age group, and for which 41 techies have been arrested by the Kerala police, they have a marvelous system of electronic, digital-oriented investigation. Other states do not have. So if a state has got system and that state could swing into operation one day, this is the level of crimes that are happening now. Imagine the level happening across the country. Imagine the level happening across the world. So it's a very serious dimension. Then one more dimension is child lane rescue. Child lane keeps on rescuing across the country in the railways and bus stops and places. They have a railway child lane too. Let me give an example of one child lane in Hyderabad. 4 railway stations in Hyderabad. 4 railway stations, the heartland of India, Hyderabad and Secunderabad. During COVID time, in a matter of 1 year time, March 2020 to March 2021, they rescued 444 children from the 4 railway stations. We all think children are safe at home. We all think children are safe at home. Your child is safe, my child is safe. But these children are not safe. So 444 children rescued by child lane in a matter of 1 year time during the COVID time in the 4 railway stations. That speaks volumes. What are these children? 50% were seen with agents, that means traffickers. 50% were seen with agents. 60% of children were from outside the state. Means a child from Assam, Mizoram being traced in Hyderabad. What does it mean? We all think trains are not running, all of us are safe. We are not safe. These children are not safe. Ladies and gentlemen, I can give many more examples. UNODC reports, etc., are all there. But many more anecdotes and evidence to prove what is happening today. The scenario is quite grim. Unless we wake up, we will not be able to handle the issue anymore. MHA has issued a guideline. There are very good practices also, very good response systems also. MHA guidelines are there. Last month they have issued a guideline, a detailed guideline how to take care of this for protecting the children affected by COVID. MHA has issued another directive for mapping exercise under the ICPS, Integrated Child Protection Fund, seeking community support and integrated care for the children abandoned and likely to be abandoned. Very good initiatives are there. There is a Twitter handle by name CyberDose available there. There is a website exclusively for cybercrimes.gov.in. All these are in place and many good work is being done. I can say islands of excellence are there, but they are not being replicated or they're not being implemented across the country. The response is completely uneven. So this workshop, this international workshop, can be a clarion call for all the law enforcement officials, all the activists, all the educationists, all the academicians to work together and take this mission forward. All the NGOs to take this mission forward. All those fighting for human rights. Madam Asha Shukla underlined the point of human rights. Rightly said. This is the gravest violation of human rights. This is the gravest exploitation of violation of human rights and dignity also. Gravest exploitation of human rights and dignity. Therefore, we all have to work together and take this forward. Government of India's directives are there. Many state governments have brought out some directives. We can take them forward. Now, coming to a few, 3 more minutes on the important aspects. Number 1, the anti-human trafficking unit. Madam Kamala Vani spoke about the anti-human trafficking unit. Ladies and gentlemen, you must understand how the units came into. There was a study, research, all India research by the National Human Rights Commission. I was privileged to do that research for them. Not as a police officer, but because of my PhD in sociology, they wanted to join the work, and Justice Verma asked me to do that work. And what did they find? 2 years intense research across the country on human trafficking. We exposed the entire myth, what is happening there, and also brought out the requirements. What is the one requirement was that people are working close, bring them together, combine them, work them together, make them work together, deliver together, work together. That message came in. Fortunately, when I moved out of this research, and then comes the UNODC to do a project in 5 states in India. They wanted me to join as a project coordinator, and I had the opportunity of getting this convergence done. There we set up anti-human trafficking units. Police officer trained, NGO trained, prosecute trained. We bring them together, work, make them deliver together. How? Give them a vehicle, give them computer systems, give them cell phones, give them money, give them resources, give them SOPs, give them guidelines, and whatnot. Madam spoke about 3 books. There are 18 books on these issues which have been prepared. I was privileged to work on these issues, and all these guidelines are available there. And what did we do? ASUs went on the ground. 9 ASUs were set up in 2007. Setting everything is very easy, but running the way is the most difficult. Handholding them, facilitating them, working with them, walk the talk and work the talk. I can tell you, these 9 ASUs made a tremendous impact. Laura Livingston, retired Secretary, Government of US, Ms. Sarla Gopalan, retired Secretary, Government of India, they went on a mission to do an evaluation after I left the project. They came out with a report, amazing report, saying it's a wonderful achievement. They suggested anti-human trafficking unit to be replicated in all the districts in India and all over the region, Bangladesh, Nepal, etc., etc. Government of India, in their wisdom, in 2010, 2012, they replicated it into 230 districts. Last year, Government of India replicated anti-human trafficking units to all the 729 districts in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, take this mission forward, work along with them, make them work. If Professor Rosalind goes to ASU, you will be welcome there. Make them work. Our presence makes a difference. So it's actually what we should do is get the anti-human trafficking units of the police functional. Number 2 is very important. We have a video conferencing facility in the trial. Normally, the victims go outside Nepal or Bangladesh. They won't come back for a video for the trial. And what happens? The case is acquitted because the victims don't come. We devised a new strategy. What is the strategy? The victim, instead of the victim going to the court, we devised a strategy of the victim going to the court. Victim going to the court. Very interesting phenomenon. A change in the paradigm of law enforcement, of justice delivery. We made a protocol. The girls are sitting in Nepal or Bangladesh. They spoke to a video, and the traffickers were convicted. We have an SOP for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, video conferencing is a very interesting dimension in protecting the rights of victims and the witnesses in their trafficking scenario, especially in transporter cases. We have another interesting part is nodal offices in the states. All states have nodal offices. If you are in a particular state, you have a problem there, connect to the nodal officer. I was privileged to set up the nodal officer in 2003 when we are working in the National Human Rights Commission. Taking it forward, the anti-human trafficking clubs in the colleges. Anti-human trafficking club is a very interesting thing. When the youth comes in, it makes a huge difference. When Kamala Veni speaks and Kamala Veni works, she can make a huge difference. That's the way it is. The power of the youth can be channelized. Therefore, we brought anti-human trafficking clubs in the colleges. Colleges are setting up anti-human trafficking clubs in different parts of the country and making a huge difference. What difference they do? They work with Childline, they visit labor camps, they walk into the police stations, they walk into anti-human trafficking units, they go over the panchayat and do a lot of work. Magnificent work is done by the youth. I would call upon each one of you sitting here in this audience, around 110 of you, I would take each one of you to set up an anti-human trafficking club in your college. Very simple. 10-20 students get together. We need a professor like Kamala Veni who is a little sensitive and taking it forward. And a local NGO can be associated and we can take along with just start off. That's it. Very small baby steps. You can make a huge difference. Today, public awareness is very important. Educating the youth, educating the adolescents how to do that. That's more important. So that start off in a small mission and you can make a huge difference. One more point is about the panchayats. All the migrants have gone back to villages and various places. What are they doing there? No jobs for the men, no jobs for the women. Children are unemployed. Children have no schools. They don't know what to do. Traffickers have reached there. What we need to do is empower the panchayats. Panchayat against the human trafficking, PAHC part. Please work along with the panchayats against human trafficking. You can make a magnificent difference. We have set up panchayat against human trafficking in several panchayats by the several NGOs and they are making a marvelous work. If any of you require an SOP on setting up anti-human trafficking club in the college or a panchayat against human trafficking, it's available and Professor Asha Shukla and Kamala Veni will have. Please collect it from them and take it forward. Last but not the least, ladies and gentlemen, this is the time we all work together. The time we all got together. If we don't work together today, all these children, all these men are going to be on sale. Our children are not for sale. Our children are not for sale. No person is for sale. What we should do is, we should spot it, we should speak it, we should act it, and we should stop it. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the excellent sharing of experience, and definitely, I think we would take up forward. I think Asha
Thank
ma'am
you,
will
sir.
definitely guide us,
Thank
and Vasanita ma'am is here to take forward the wordings that you have told us, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the excellent presentation, and especially for sticking on to the time, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Next, I would like to introduce Professor K. Manimegle, Head and Director, Department of Women Studies. Ma'am, are you there, ma'am? Manimegle, ma'am? Manimegle, ma'am? I think ma'am told me she'll join me by 5 minutes, ma'am. So, but till then, I think we can have a little discussion, ma'am. By then, I'll call her and get arranged, ma'am. If anybody has got doubts, I think you can share your views with sir. 5 minutes.
Yeah,
In the
Meera ji,
meantime.
please call Bhamati madam.
Yes, ma'am.
Namaskar.
Yeah, we can put the next person in and we can,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, ma'am. 1 second, ma'am. I'll
that's
just
nice.
introduce.
Well, yeah. Bhamati madam is ready, so we can
Yes, ma'am.
proceed
So
that
we'll
way.
move ahead, ma'am.
Yeah,
So I'm happy to
thank
introduce Ms. Bhamati, ma'am. Ms. Bhamati is an IAS officer of 1979 batch of Bihar cadre. Presently, she is the Special Secretary and Financial Advisor in the Secretary grade for the four Ministers of Rural Development, Panchayati Raj, Drinking Water and Sanitation and Land Resource, Government of India. Hailing from Tamil Nadu, she holds a master's degree in English Literature from Madras University, along with MA degree in Rural Development from University of East Anglia, Norwich, UK. She was conferred with MPhil degree in Women's Studies by Mother Teresa Women's University, Kodaikanal, Tamil Nadu. She has recently obtained an MBA degree in Disaster Management from Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasad University, New Delhi. Before joining the IAS, she started her professional career as lecturer in the Department of English Literature in Stella Maris College, Madras. Besides her field postings as district collector and deputy development commissioner in Palmu, Hazirabad, Gaya, and Munger in Bihar, she has served with the government of Bihar in various capacities in Department of Finance, Energy, and Health, among others. In the Government of India, she served as a Ministries of Home Affairs, Women and Child Development, and Ministry of Social Welfare. In the Department of Women and Child Development, she brought out first country report on children in prostitution and assisted the department of setting up National and State Resource Center for Women on secondment by the ministry to UNICEF and Danida, Delhi respectively. She served as a senior advisor with UNFPA Delhi and UNDP Regional Office of Southeast Asia, HIV and Development Delhi, and has also worked extensively on the issues of gender-based violence, sex ratios, sex selective abortions, two-child norms, reproductive health, male participation, gender and rights-based population policies of government, human trafficking, unsafe migration, and HIV/AIDS. She has worked closely with the NGOs, other civil society partners, NCPRC, Commission for Women and Human Rights in Centers and State for Policy Advocacy, and changing mindsets on gender through training and sensitization for policymakers, program managers, NGOs, law enforcement agencies, prosecutors, judges, media, elected representatives of Panchayat Raj institutions, and healthcare providers. She has guided a range of gender based research activities within the UN system that have since been published. She stated a 6 month web-based certificate. She has started a 6 month web-based certificate course on anti-human trafficking in collaborative effort with Ministry of Home Affairs and IGNO and launched by the Union Home Ministry in 2010. She has worked with the Chief Justice of various high courts in organizing judicial colloquy on anti-human trafficking and advocating on right-based population policies. On recent directive of Honorable Chief Justice, she has assisted the court as an expert in the matter relating to human trafficking in Bhajio Karmaste versus UOI. She has written and produced training manuals on trafficking, HIV, reproductive health, primarily from the gender perspective. She has written dissertations on political economy of rural public works programs in 1994, gender and bureaucracy in 1999, and national disaster management through ex ante risk and multilateral bodies, financial risk and risk transfers. She has been widely considered by the government, NGOs, UN and multilateral bodies, and has made presentation on her areas of expertise nationally and internationally. Amidst of her hectic schedule, she agreed to deliver the keynote address, and we are happy to have such an eminent personality among us. Welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Kamlaveni. You've been doing such a great job all these days organizing this seminar with you and Jaya. We've got new friends today. We had great friends and allies in Professor Shukla and Jaya Fukan in the past, right from the days from say 2000, early 2000, and now we have found some newfound friends in common areas of interest. Thank you. Professor Kaliraj, Vice Chancellor of Bharatiyar University, Coimbatore, Professor Ashish Shukla, chairperson of today's event, Senator Rosalind, Ms. Kamlaveni, and all the distinguished speakers, guests, and students and teachers. It's a great pleasure to be here with this group, eminent group, to be talking about a topic which is a raging concern of the day. It's COVID on one side and trafficking on the other side. Now, any disaster is gender, class, caste, and age blind. We call disaster a leveler. It's only partly true. It's not. It is partly a myth. Now, they affect children more than adults. They affect girls more than boys. And they affect women more than men. This is well documented through research and ground level experiences. That's because there is an intersectional impact of threefold burden, which is class, economic, caste, social, and age. All these three are woven in the gender burden. The most common manifestation of gender impact of any disaster is today's topic, human trafficking. In fact, it's jokingly said that the first responders in any human trafficking post-disaster are the traffickers. They come in to fish in the stream of migration because that's the time people move out. Unsafe migration triggered by disasters. And then you have child marriage, selling of girls, procuration of minors, child prostitution, child sexual abuse, which is happening even now. It's cyber crimes against children is a more recent and newer variation, as Dr. Nair called it, as the new abnormal. The normlessness that we had in human trafficking is now extending into the virtual world. The common modes of trafficking, the modus operandi, was always coercion, kidnapping, abduction, all of which is described in the law. The swift passing of girls and boys amongst traffickers and various networks, including brothel owners, which are now mostly predominantly women, and there is a lot of illegal confinement. Now, I am talking about the common manifestation and the common modus operandi to benchmark whether is it more of the same or is something new happening in today's scenario. So we will come to, when we come to the modus operandi aspect, we will look at that issue. Now, when we say gender and COVID and trafficking, it's not a homogeneous group. We need to look at who are the actors in this. And therefore, we look at disaggregation of the actors who are impacted by human trafficking and COVID, linked with COVID. Victims of sex trafficking, we are calling them women in prostitution, is one category. Those who are forced to rely on sex work as a choice of livelihood because they have nowhere else to go. They have suffered out of force, they've been trafficked, but then eventually they have given in and chosen to remain in. So it's not a choose, it's not a choice, there's choicelessness is a choice. The other category are the sex workers who are there by choice, who claim that they are there by choice and by consent. The third is the category of traffic survivors who are no more in sex work. They have voluntarily left sex work and they have been rescued either by their own efforts or by the help of some NGOs or the police, and they have now decided to start a new life. Those are the traffic survivors. Now these are the first three categories. The fourth category are those who are vulnerable to trafficking and who are going to be called the trafficked victims. If they get trafficked, will be a traffic victim. So we have three pathways. One is women in prostitution along with sex workers who are there by choice. We have the second pathway of traffic survivors and the third category of those who are vulnerable to trafficking. And this is what is the disaggregation of the categories that I'm talking about. Now, there is some commonality between trafficking and HIV/AIDS because both are public health crises. But from the point of view of human trafficking and prostitution, HIV/AIDS focused on those who were in sex work to enable them to navigate safe sex, negotiate safe sex, and those who were disempowered and who could not negotiate safe sex. So the targeted interventions of HIV/AIDS were with these two categories of people, which was coming out as lateral transmission of HIV/AIDS in order to prevent vertical transmission of HIV/AIDS. So the core of the targeted intervention of HIV/AIDS is that as a public health emergency where transmission of diseases was involved. That's why there is a certain amount of commonality, but the element of disconnect is also important. So, but when you come to COVID, it involves the prevention education, involves the masses. There's universality as against targeted intervention. Therefore, every individual is potentially at risk to any other individual if exposed to the virus, whether symptomatic or asymptomatic. So it's a public health emergency, yes, like HIV/AIDS, but it is a humanitarian emergency and also called a pandemic. Now, if this is the preface to what is the gender impact of COVID norms on human trafficking, then this augurs ill for the first two categories I mentioned about sex workers and women in prostitution, and also traffic survivors, and when victims are trafficked, those victims. So because they are liable to contract the disease and also can become a hotspot of or a medium of transmission or spread of the virus if risks are avoided. Now, the hypothesis that I'm now coming to is a COVID-driven sexual behavior and human trafficking. If this is the scenario, prima facie, sex work, prostitution, and commercial sexual exploitation of trafficked victims will attract violation of COVID protocols and violation of lockdown rules. Assuming that everybody is pro-life, that they want to live and they want to live without morbidities, certainly not COVID morbidities, then the women, the clients who come to visit the women and the traffickers who control traffic victims, all of them assuming that they are all risk averse. If they are all risk averse, then potentially it can spell death knell to sexual slavery and human trafficking. That's all reality. I'm saying it's a hypothesis. If this is the scenario, then there will be no demand, no supply. However, and no sexual slavery. Therefore, what emerges is a corollary is presumably, I'm underlining presumably because this is not what's happening. Presumably, there is no increase in human trafficking and there is only decrease because demand has come down. That's a fact. All reports are reporting that there is diminishing demand, right? However, the condition here is that women in sex work and women in prostitution will be in a dilemma because they want to know whether they should avoid COVID or whether they should avoid hunger. If they go without a job, this only livelihood, this is what they call the chosen livelihood. If they don't have this livelihood, then they are in for hunger, they are in for poverty. So, because it means loss of only source of livelihoods and income. So, it becomes incumbent on the part of women in prostitution and sex workers to overcome the risk of not practicing social distancing. They will have risk management methods which has cost implications. Now, when there is a demand and there is a visit by a so-called client, they will not only have to now negotiate for condoms, which they did when there was HIV/AIDS, but they also have to negotiate with them for wearing masks. They have to invest on sanitizers, and they might, if they are able to do it, they are empowered enough to do it, to ensure only they visit them only after vaccinations. Now, this is to overcome the risk of not practicing social distancing. But these have cost implications. And therefore, only to avoid hunger, they will make the best of the reduced demand to avoid HIV/AIDS and also to avoid hunger. Now, in this, we are looking at the differential impact on these three pathways. One is sex workers with women in prostitution, the second category of traffic survivors, and the third category of trafficked victims. What is the current ground reality for sex workers and women in prostitution? If the demand has come down, then there will be too many women competing for fewer clients. Hence, the quantum of earning per client will reduce, which they would accept because of desperation. Now, those who cannot compete in this competition of between demand and supply, with higher supply and lower demand, they will have to leave sex work or prostitution and will have no other way, alternate ways of employment or income. They will get eliminated. In the absence of any other means of earnings, therefore, the situation will be that their relative poverty will become acute and absolute. This is the lesson that we have to take from this part of this group of those who will be affected, the first pathway. We also may remember that this will invite unimaginable, untold economic and psychological devastation to their children and their families, especially because they are female-headed and single women bread earner families. Now, the overriding factor, therefore, in all this, that is if COVID protocols means that if they are followed, that means demand supply both will come down, but it will not come down because women have to earn, and if they have to earn enough, and therefore they will compromise, and with using risk management methods, they will continue to entertain demand, which means that they will have far less income. They are not going into absolute poverty. They will have far less incomes, and they will look for support from the government and non-government and community-based organizations because they will require relief. Now, this is the logic that will become very crucial. Now, one of the things that is the myth that has been broken with Corona in the context of sexual exploitation and prostitution and human trafficking is that it was believed that those who opted for sex work as the only choice or those who, the sex workers and the women in prostitution, it was said that they made empowering choices, that they were empowered to make the choice. Today, that myth of empowerment has been broken because of COVID. So if protocols are followed, then if nobody wants to take risks, there will be no demand and there will be no income, and then the livelihood will go. Therefore, the rationale for government to support sex workers and those in prostitution is strongly established. It is not that government has not done anything. The government has announced relief schemes during COVID lockdown for those working in the informal sector, and these people are covered in the informal sector. They should be covered, ideally. But many lack government approved documentation such as Aadhaar card, the voter ID card, the ration card. In the absence of the address proof, they are not in a position to get the relief. Now, this is a very serious situation that we all need to work, and it is hoped that this seminar will bring out this very important point. Although Supreme Court in the Buddhev Karmaskar case and also the NHRC guidelines have been issued to ensure that government decision to supply relief it covers all of them. In many cases, it has happened wherever they remained in groups. They fought through with the local officials and got it even without some cards, but some identity was given. Because they don't have address proof, this is a very crucial point. They don't have address proof, they are not in a position to avail the benefits. Now, they also get into an endless debt cycle with the loan sharks and the money lenders. And the Money Lender Act has to come to the forefront. There's nobody who is enforcing the law. It is a practically unenforced and unsupervised area which has got very strong links with the poor, with those who are impoverished in the COVID context, and particularly women who are already having to pay a lot of debts. And these debts will not be paid in any short time. It's going to take very long. And this will lead to intergenerational bondage. Intergenerational bondage in the context of COVID and human trafficking and prostitution means that there'll be a cycle. The cycle will get perpetuated. And there will be a wageless situation. As with bonded laborers who are in a non-human trafficking, non-sexual exploitation context, the same will happen to them. And therefore, this means that there is an entire loss of the loss of the entire ecosystem. They relied on the corner shop, on the street cars for easy access to food. Nothing is available now. So one can expect a very sharp spike in mental health issues, depression, anxiety, etc. Now, let us look at what is happening to traffic survivors. I'm looking at disaggregation of difficulties faced by each category in this group. Now, the second category, which we were talking about, the pathway that I was talking about, was traffic survivors. Now, I told you traffic survivors means that they have come out voluntarily. They wanted to opt out of prostitution. They were trafficked, they were coerced into prostitution. However, they have now came out of prostitution, opting out of prostitution because of some help that they got from some NGO or whatever. Now, they have not been reintegrated in the family, and therefore they are all living as, again, female-headed persons or single women breadwinner families. And they are living alone, they are living in isolation. In some cases, there are groups, and I'll come to that later. But there is an element of self-empowerment and self-supporting or NGO supporting phase that they were going through after they came out of prostitution. So they are gone into some kind of jobs so that they don't face stigma in their own homes. They migrate to areas where they can get jobs. So they are all in isolation, and this is what now where they have come out of prostitution, willingly foregone the earnings of prostitution, and come out to an area where they don't want to get prostitution, and what they want to live with dignity, which is what they want, their concept of dignity. And if they have lost their earnings because of because of lockdowns, because of loss of job, loss of incomes, reduced incomes, etc., which means that they are now very much like all those in the informal labor sector economy with nothing to write home about. they are in dire need of supplementing their resources and living and continuing their education online, and they are therefore, if we do not help them, these women are liable to be re-trafficked. And that's a very important point that we need to keep in. Or some of them might think that they may they may again re-opt to go into the fragile zone of prostitution. Now, they are faced with choicelessness arising from COVID, and which means that this cumulative impact on traffic survivors in particular is there is consolidation and deepening of disempowerment. This is very important. Now, therefore, the criticality of supporting traffic survivors is timely government intervention through transitional housing, through bank loans, and alternate employment and relief and relation, which they gave, which sex workers and prostitutions are also demanding. Access to all this so that there can be the opportunity for exit strategy becomes final, that they don't want to opt out, that they want to opt out and not go back to prostitution is recognized and sealed then and there. So that is also not yet happening. That's the reality. Now let's come to the fourth category, the third category, which is the traffic victims. Now what's happening in this area? The current reality is that it is demand driven. Demand driven. The traffickers, the crimesters, the organized mafia, for them, this is the livelihood. They get money out of aiding, abetting, spiking up, and proliferating demand. This is how they function. So for them, they are not going to live without any loss of income. And that is how trafficking is going on unabated even during COVID. Whereas the logic is that if there's lockdown, if there cannot be any physical contact, there not be any touch, if we have to use only masks, and if we are having to maintain social distancing, all of this should finish. It's not finished. But that's because the traffickers have made this demand a perpetual demand, even in COVID, not sparing children, even in COVID. Now, the traffickers know very well that they cannot engage these children immediately in the context of labor, sexual exploitation, They can't immediately place them in their exploitative sites or their locations. So what is it that they are looking for is waiting for a kill. The predators are on the prowl and they are trafficking. They are continuing trafficking. When there is lockdown, severe lockdown, the movement of children is not in bulk. If the railway system, if the transport system gets limited, internal and railways, buses, etc., if it's limited, but in relaxed lockdowns, they are making merry. Now we have to look at how trafficking forms adjust to lockdown situation. So they are following their modus operandi is aligned to COVID protocols, and at the same time they are getting as much as they could get. But as much that they get cannot be put to immediate use because there is diminishing demand. And therefore, what they are working with is wait for a time when the unmet demand can be met, where the postponed demand can be fulfilled, and this is the modus operandi. So when the fact is that pay now, lie low, reap later. This is the strategy of traffickers at this point in time. Now, the landscape is that, therefore, prostitution, sexual exploitation, human trafficking, sexual slavery, far from ending. There's a possibility, we have lost that possibility, has far from ending, has mutated as unmet or postponed or pending demand of the sex and the labor trafficking industry in the eyes of traffickers. the traffickers are waiting for a kill. Now, ground level reports, media reports, NCW reports, NCPCR announcements, and other testimonies show that trafficking is happening unabated, and the magnitude of and dimension were never ever understood, and it's more not amenable to any form of numerical assessment in this context. As Dr. Nair said, there are 440 in some place, there are 3 in some places. In Howrah, they took a railload of people when the lockdown relaxed. So the traffickers are playing by the ear. They know how to play by the ear. So in some places, there are smaller incremental operations in dispersed geographies, but it's happening all around the country. So it makes detection and rescue of victims practically impossible because of it's reinforced by docking. It was always a problem, but it's reinforced by lockdowns. And therefore, the risk of trafficking is further lowered in the COVID context. And because the investigative agencies and the judicial system are now slack because of COVID, or that they are preoccupied, or the police are preoccupied with enforcing COVID protocols, not able to get in mobilize evidences, everything is delayed and it's gone slack. Therefore, any trafficked child it's far more difficult for them to be rescued. If the numbers were 40,000, be prepared for a much higher number. If it was 60 rescued and 40 not rescued, be prepared for a higher number. It's going to be very difficult to get them out. Now, one reason is also that community level workers are also equally bound by protocols, and the teachers are also not in a position to identify at-risk victims. Now, I will just, the online pandemic, I think there's a session tomorrow, so I will not go into that. But the modus operandi, old modus operandi of child marriage, of getting orphans, and all the push factors have to be kept in mind when we are dealing with. Now, the main point is, what is it that we need to do? What are the observation and conclusions? 1. Women in prostitution and sex workers are losing out on livelihoods that they chose to be in due to diminishing demand. Traffic survivors are likely to fall back on prostitution or get re-trafficked. All of them may escape corona, but they will not escape hunger, malnutrition, as they slide down from relative to acute and absolute poverty. And COVID-19 is a cloak for criminal networks. They are predators in waiting. Labor trafficking has increased. Yes, traffickers are addressing upcoming and potential demand for cheap and child labor pending economic recovery post-corona. Cross-border and international trafficking has definitely reduced. Steep increase in sex trafficking in the virtual world, which we call the online pandemic. Give me 5 more minutes, Kamlaveni. I'm just completing. Thank you so much. The initiatives to prevent, protect, and support. The strict compliance of the Supreme Court directions has to be done. This requires proactive support from government in getting their identification done, which can help them access free rations and relief offered by government. We have to continue the supplementary nutrition services. The ICDS cannot get closed. The cash and kind transfers cannot get closed. The cash-based, the digital transfers cannot get closed. And now community policing has a very significant role to play in this kind of prevention. Strict law enforcement and penal action against money lenders and loan sharks, and support for women-owned enterprises and social innovations that can lead to self-employment. Cyber security, child protection measures is very critical. Declaring war on, now this has to be declared as an essential service, because in India, as in other countries, they are freeing up law enforcement who were earlier in this work for enforcing COVID protocols. Therefore, the Childline Service and the AHTUs have to be made an declared essential services, where the staff and the personnel will work 24/7, maybe in shifts, but it has to be kept operational 24/7. Now, the last point is, where have we succeeded? And we have succeeded by default in some areas, and I'm identifying those areas. The women's self-help groups in general have risen to this extraordinary challenge with immense courage and dedication. This is well documented. There is a World Bank study, you can go through it. Their quick responses to food insecurity and shortages in goods and services show how this decentralized structure can be a vital source in time of crisis. I'm only getting you two examples of where the self-help groups and the women's collectives have saved people both from COVID and human trafficking, which is that they have got together despite their poverty, despite their marginalization, evolving marginalization, gradual marginalization. They have been able to keep together, where they have closed the brothels as a joint decision, as a collective decision. Whenever there was a lockdown, they have done it. They have done it at a great cost. They have also not allowed any of the women workers who have lost their lives in COVID, their children to go. The orphans have been taken care of by these women self-help groups. They have provided, the traffic survivors have got together and provided ration as a way of making money, not at a more appropriate competitive rate, that they have been able to supply food. And they have all stayed together in many places to fight for getting ration and relief as a group, that they have been able to have a collective approach and strategy to make things work. This is called self-help. Nobody else is coming to their help, and self-help has to be identified. This has to remain a constant concern and strategy in the fight against COVID and human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was an excellent presentation. Thank you so much, ma'am. So next
Thank you
time,
for the presentation, madam. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you. That was a lot of data. So it really makes a lot of difference when people who have worked in this stream and you are all in positions. So the data and information is so strong, definitely a big ringing bell. It has triggered so much of thoughts within me. Hope we and my beautiful team will really see how this can be moved forward. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, you are the bold and the beautiful, and let me share with you all my presentation. Whenever it's required, I'll share my presentation. Thank you so much, Professor Shukla. Thank you so much, Zineta, Kamlaveni, and all the speakers. Thank you for your time and attention. I crossed my limit a bit, but in the keeping the victims in mind, I hope I'm pardoned. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes.
Now I'm here
Thank
to
you, ma'am.
introduce Irene George. Irene George is adjunct faculty at the Emeritus Institute of Banking and Finance, UAE. She received her master's in business administration from Birla Institute of Management Technology, Delhi, and has studied at
Dr.
Nova
Kamla,
with-
Dr.
Yes,
Kamla,
ma'am.
Professor Mani Meklai is here.
Yes, ma'am. I told ma'am by 6:55 to 7:25, which is okay. I mean, ma'am has to tell. Manivegle ma'am has to tell.
Yes, yes, yes.
Ma'am, is it okay, ma'am, by 6:55 to 7:25?
Yeah, it's up to you.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. Okay. So now she has worked as an assistant professor of commerce and management, as assistant manager at Future Generale Mumbai, and recruitment officer at New York University, Dubai. She is the co-editor of the Handbook of Research on Gender Mainstreaming and Women Empowerment. She presents and publishes widely on gender issues. In this conference, she is invited in the capacity as a leading lifestyle blogger in Dubai and digital marketing expert, and also as an online content writer. This summarizes the quantum of time she spends online. She will be making a presentation on why Indian women are more prone to cyber abuses, and will be presenting few tips against cybercrimes from the viewpoint of young scholar. Welcome you, Irene George.
Thank you so much, ma'am, Kamlaveni, ma'am. I'm very glad to be here. Since I understand we have a crunch of time, I'm going to jump right into the presentation. Hello, everyone. Let me share my screen right now. Can somebody please confirm if the screen is visible to you? Yes? Is the PPT visible?
Yes, Irene.
Yeah.
You can
All right.
proceed.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, as per Indian timing. I'm Irene George. As an introduction has already been done. let me jump into the topic. I'm mostly going to be talking about cybercrime and types of it that most of us are prone to, not only from business point of view, but women. That's what we are focusing on today. So let me jump right into the cybercrime topic. We talk about trafficking, which is the worst form of it. And there are various types of cybercrime that we deal with. Mostly when it comes to corporates, there are different types of it, which is targeting a multi-million organization for a ransom that leads to thousands of dollars, thousands of millions of dollars. And there are various types of it that moves all the way to a woman living right next to you as your neighbor or a child of your friends. So they are all victims of cybercrime in one way or the other without realizing how to safeguard themselves. Most of the cybercrimes, they can be political, they can be for profit, and they can be for personal reasons. And most of the time, these are these personal reasons that affect women of our lives. Coming into different types of cybercrime, most of us know there are a lot of ransomware, data breach, phishing, malware. These are the type of cybercrimes that affects organizations, but it affects us too. Ransomware could be something as simple as you clicking on a link that was emailed to you, and a lot of your data on your computer is available to a stranger. And that stranger can later ask you for lots of money to avoid it from going into a public platform. There are lots of harassment that goes behind the cybercrime big platforms that we have, social media such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, that everyone is a lot into these days, especially the average age of people who are using TikTok is 18 years old. That's right. Kids who are studying in 12th grade in school, first year of college, that is the majority population we are talking about. So there is so much possibility of cybercrime that they are prone to. Cyber defamation for most of the outspoken women, especially if they are dare enough to speak against any kind of issues that they are facing. Cyber bullying that is faced by a lot of students, as small as somebody who could be slightly on the obese or healthy side. They face it even as small as in 7th grade or 7 years old even. A recent study was 2 days ago when they showed students who are in primary school being very conscious about how they look because of the immense standards that they see, unattainable standards that they see on social media platforms. And that leads to cyberbullying. Child pornography, as we all know, heinous crime as it may be, that is very common in cybercrime platforms. Cyber grooming, cyber grooming is, it starts very easily. Kids are so prone to it. A stranger who is willing to listen to them, somebody who can relate to them, the music that they talk about, the sports that they talk about, which later leads into trafficking. All right, so these are various types of cybercrime that we talk about. Now the question is, how did COVID-19 make it all worse? What happened during last 2020, 15 months of the time? What we see is with COVID-19, what happened is a lot of organizations are no longer available in brick and mortar time because you are quarantined. So almost 61% of the common people started approaching businesses through online platform. Digital platform is the place where most of the people are selling their products and services. That increased by 57%. Looking at you and me, we started spending almost 10 hours more on online platforms, whether it is for educational purposes, whether it is for research, whether it is for work from home purposes. We are spending on an average of 12 hours online, and that is minimum. Most of the people are spending even more. So what happened is, even students, we always used to say, screen time is bad for our kids, but what do now? They study on screen. So they are all not immune to it. It's so easily accessible. All our kids are accessible. All our teenagers, all our unaware minority people are easily accessible and prey to cyber crimes. With COVID-19, as you can see in the graph, what you see is Back in 2019 in US, the number of cases, for ransomware, they used to pay like $60,000 million, but now in 2020, companies paid up to $180,000 million as ransom for cybercrime. If companies are not immune to this, how are we immune to this? How are our kids and women immune to this? Right? So that is the immense amount of cybercrime we are talking about that has happened because of COVID. The increase of it is because of COVID, because we are accessible. So there's UAE as being a very developed country, not prone to very prone to it, not immune to it. As you can see, the numbers are not lying. More than 50% of all sorts of cybercrime happened, but not so much of increase when it comes to women-related cybercrime. Well, that is a good side of UAE. We will be looking into India, UAE stream again and again. In India, again, there are a lot of increase in cybercrime, but when it comes to women-related and personal cyber attacks, it is higher in India. National Commission of Women, they were able to say that usually they used to get 10 complaints per day, but during COVID, ever since March 25th of 2020, they started getting 20 to 25 cases per day, women-related cybercrimes. That is 150% increase in cybercrimes for women in India. And this is only tip of the iceberg. We all know that because the actual number of incidents are more than double of that. Only so many people are brave enough to come forward and file a case. During most of the women cyber crimes faced by women during COVID period in India was online threats. Cyber revenge is something I want to give a little bit of attention to. We talk about how our Bollywood movies and Tollywood movies and all sorts of movies across India saying of the hero running behind the heroine, not taking no for an answer. Well, the the youth of India is seeing that, and that's what they're learning. They don't know to take no for an answer when a woman says no. And during COVID period, we may not see so many acid attacks, but it is equivalent what they do as cyber revenge. What you see online, morphed pictures of a woman who said no to him is going online. And these are enough to make a woman take the extreme step. Maybe or not everyone is aware enough about their rights when it comes to lawful penalizing them. But a lot of women take their life. We have seen multiple cases happening in 2019, 2020 because of morphed pictures going on websites. There are a lot of malicious emails that we see, ransom demands on personal front. Most of the reason why we think is, why is this happening to women more? Why? Why does it happen to young adults, women of 18 and 15 and 25? Why does it happen to women more? Even women of 50, 55 years old, they're all being prey to this. One of the major reasons that we have to talk about is lack of digital skills. It is fun to be on social media, but most of the people are not aware of the things that are possible. Digital skills come safety aspect as well. How should I be safe myself? How should I make myself safe from being attacked of other hackers, people attacking my computer, my mobile phones, accessing pictures without even me saying okay to it? So that is where lack of awareness and all this come into play. Lack of awareness in terms of your rights when it comes to how Indian law can help you and keep you safe. A lot of people feel because of the lack of ineffective law, most of the time we see is justice delayed is being justice denied, and which leads to motivating criminals. So this is all so very interconnected. Another thing that we want to look into is societal attitude towards women. Objectification of women is nothing new to us. It's been happening ever since advertisement is there, that is more than a century-year-old. But why do we get so prone towards looking at a woman, a morphed picture of a woman, but not a morphed picture of a man? So that kind of attitude towards women, as long as it exists, You are just waiting to become a victim of cybercrime if you do not protect yourself, whether it is you, me, or anyone. We are all prone to that. Another one is lack of confiding relationships, whether it is lack of being close to your parent. That teenager may get may fall into some stranger being very sweet to him or her, or being available to talk to whenever, and that is child grooming, online grooming, which later becomes trafficking. They may share a picture, they may share a video, which later turns into a blackmail material. Last but not the least, differential nature of victimization. This is just the way how rape victims go through, whether it is in India, UAE, America, any part of the world. The victimization process, you were available because of which you went through it. That kind of narrative is something that we need to change. A victim is not the reason why it happened. There are predators everywhere. Well, that kind of narrative needs to be more propagated. All right, moving on. Cybercrime against women, UAE is lesser. This is something very strong statement as I can understand. What we are going to look at is there are three main reasons why we see cybercrime against women is lesser in UAE. First and foremost, status of women. This is a Muslim country. The law is predominantly based on Islamic law. I have been living here for more than 5 to 6 years, more than half a decade. I have never been street harassed. I've walked on the road in the middle of the night, I go for grocery shopping, and never been street harassed, no matter what you're wearing. The respect that women get in this country is number one in the world. UAE is ranked number one in the world for the way a woman is treated with respect. 2/3 of the public sector jobs in this country is held by women. So that kind of status that women have in this country, that itself, it has an effect on psychological aspect of people who live here. Next one is highly aware population. Oh, we are not talking about just kids being active on social media or online. We are talking about parents who are proactively connected with the school system, with the students, with the kids. They are highly aware about what is happening. They are highly trained by schools. Schools do not just train students, they train parents how to handle the laptop and the tabs they have, iPads that the children have. There are training sessions for parents too. And we are talking about training sessions for kids who are as young as 5 years. That's the kind of training that institutions in UAE give. It's not just students using an iPad, it's constantly training students and teachers and parents what is right, what is wrong, where do you draw the line, what is approachable, what is not. So that kind of training is constantly happening when it comes to institutional involvement in UAE. Last but not the least, the strong law. We talk about how good our law system is in India. It's pretty good in UAE too. But what is the difference? It's the way the law in UAE is stringent. It's so effective and it scares people. People are going to think 10 times more before actually doing anything wrong. Because if in India, if you look at it, the maximum or most of the section 354A of Indian Penal Code, everything is like 1 year of jail time, 50,000 rupees. In UAE, we are talking about 6 months to 10 years of imprisonment, 50 lakhs as the fine. That's a starting fine. We are talking about 50 lakhs. All right, that goes all the way up to 6 crores. If you're not able to pay this, it's additional jail time. And if you're not a UAE citizen, you're going to get deported after your jail time. So the amount of scariness that the law gives is insane, and it is effectively implemented. Looking at how the procedure for remedy is, of course, approaching your nearby cell, cyber cell when it comes to India, contacting police station. You can even file anonymously on cybercrime.government.in. In UAE, we have a lot of procedures. Similarly, there is e-crime website. police station, call, or website again. And there is an app. In UAE, there is an app for everything. Whether you have an accident or whether you go through, whether you are a victim of any sorts of crime. And that is My Safe Society app. Whether you are a victim or you saw a problem happening, you can log in on that and it will be followed through. Just an example, I had an accident 2 months ago. There was a police on the scene with less than 10 minutes with the accident video. That is the kind of effectiveness we are talking about. Anyway, looking at some online safety measures from individual level, we will look at institutional level after this. Being aware of irrelevant, fraudulent emails, messages, you will get. So there are a lot of ways in which these fraudulent people are also very smart. They give you lotteries, they give you invest 10,000 rupees, you will make it 5 times within a month. And you will think, oh, it's just 1,000 rupees. Let me give that. But what you're giving them access is to your bank account. And from there, that 1,000 rupees is going to be all of your savings. Not to respond to your email messages, whatever personal information it is asking for, whether it is your birthday, whether it is your birthplace, because those are usually the safety question answers. Being aware of fraudulent websites which steal your personal information. It may look like a beautiful online shopping website, but no, that is going to go into your computer, get all your data. Last but not the least, using strong passwords and being very aware of adding strangers to your social network. All right, looking at some institutional level, major one would be being very aware about our rights and our situation. For that, we need to have more awareness programs, whether it is at school level, college level, or in general for the public. And it's easy these days with, by connecting it with institutions, it's easier to do that instead of doing it for the public. Cyber laws must be strictly implemented, not just for the sake of, oh, yes, we have the law. It needs to be strictly implemented to be taken seriously. Because, as you can see, the connection is like this. Justice delayed is almost equal to justice denied. And when you see this delay and denial happening, the criminals are getting motivated to not stop. They're going to keep going. For example, I don't know if any of you heard of Sully Deal, which was a website, an app that was there 20 days ago where they were selling pictures of Muslim women. Yeah, this was happening in India. And this was a horrible situation. They just closed the app. But the point is, no action has been taken against the people who created it. That's how easy it is to get away with things. Anyway, last but not the least, the point would be women blaming injustice, especially in victimization process. Being very aware that it's not the victim's fault. And us changing the narrative is very important. Being a very involved parent and educator, teachers, professors, all of us being very involved in youngsters' life, and that awareness being multiplied hundreds of times is going to make our society a better place for the women and children. Thank you so much. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Irene. I think we have made the professor to wait on, and I don't think we'll have time for discussion. Thank you so much for the excellent presentation and sticking on to time. Thank you.
I was literally running. All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
So
ma'am.
I
Thank
take
you,
this
Ashish
great
Shukla, ma'am.
opportunity. Yeah, I
Thank you
take
so
this
much.
great opportunity to welcome Professor K. Manimaker, Head and Director of Women's Studies, Director Distance Education, Alagappa University, Karaikudi. Ma'am has 33 years of teaching experience, 32 years of research experience, and 15 years of administrative experience. He has served in various academic positions like Director, Department of Women's Studies, Dean Faculty of Arts, Alagappa University, Karaikudi, Registrar in Charge, Alagappa University, Karaikudi, and Vice Chancellor, Mother Teresa Women's University, Kodaikanal. She has completed 18 projects and produced 6 PhDs with 2 ongoing projects. She has published 29 articles in non-papers, 5 articles published in Scopus Index Journal, and 15 articles published in Care Journal. In addition, she has authored 16 books, 3 edited books, and 16 chapters in the edited book. And she has received 11 awards for her excellent contributions to academics and administration. She has been nominated and participated as member in important committees like UGC Government of India, Expert Committee Development of Women Studies in Indian Universities and Colleges, NET, MHRD Government of India Revision of Syllabus in Women Studies Expert Committee, National Testing Agency New Delhi Subject Expert in Women Studies, Governor's Nominee for Selection Committee, University of Madras, Chennai, Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University, Chennai, Bharatiyar University, Coimbatore, Vice Chancellor now of Bharatiyar University, Coimbatore, Union Public Service Commission member, Tamil Nadu Public Service Commission advisor, member in West Bengal Commission for Selection of College Teachers, member in the Committee for Screening Application for the Post of Professors in Gender Studies in Rajiv Gandhi National Institute of Youth Development, member in Tamil Nadu State Council for Higher Education, Government of Higher Education, Government of Higher Education, Government of Higher Education, 11 times. She has served as participants, friends, kindly put your videos off and audios off. She has served as chairperson for NAC Peer Team visits 11 times, and she has mobilized funds of rupees 42 crores for institutional building, infrastructure facility development, and major developmental projects. We are happy to have such an eminent personality among us. Sorry for the inconvenience caused, ma'am. Welcome you, ma'am. Ma'am, are you here, ma'am?
Good evening to Manimeghla, madam. Madam, are you there, madam?
Yes, ma'am. She's coming in, ma'am. She has got some connectivity problem. She's getting in.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening.
Yeah, Kamalaveni, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you, ma'am. I actually introduced you, ma'am. And sorry for the inconvenience caused, ma'am. Please go ahead.
No. I sincerely thank Asha madam and the great efforts taken by Janita Kamalaveni and the approval has given by your Vice Chancellor. So I thank your Vice Chancellor also because it is a very important area that we are going to have we are discussing about the area of human trafficking. The topic given to me is human trafficking and exploitation in India during COVID-19. Can you able to see the slides?
Yes, ma'am.
Is
We are
it visible?
Yes, madam. It is clear. Kindly proceed, madam.
Okay, very good. Next slide. Yeah. So it is. What is the need to talk about human trafficking today? There are a number of other problems. The COVID is very serious. Why we are connecting this human trafficking and COVID? There is a need to connect these two areas. And during this COVID period, the trafficking has also increased. When we, after has given the acceptance of this conference, when we were searching for the data and the materials, we were able to find out that during this COVID time, the trafficking has increased quite a lot. Though in Delhi and Maharashtra, it is very high. In Delhi, it is increased the average rate is 608, and the second highest number of trafficking of minor at 536. The children from tribal areas are at a greater risk of human trafficking, that too particularly Kuki from Manipur and Nagas from Northeast. So, nearly 40,000 children are trafficked annually. It is the data given by the National Human Rights Commission in India. And for your kind information, this is only the registered number. So let us think of the unregistered numbers. It will be there, definitely it will be more than this. And 12,000 to 50,000 women and children are trafficked into India annually from the neighboring nations as sex workers. So why this trafficking? Is it only for sexual exploitation? Means it is not so. There are umpteen number of reasons for sex this trafficking. It is not done by an individual. It is by a group of people. It is a group crime involving exploitation of men, women, and children, mainly for financial reasons, which is violation of fundamental human rights. Human trafficking is the third largest international crime, and over 1 million people trafficked annually. Millions of men, women, and children are victims of human trafficking. Human trafficking is a part of the larger problem of slavery. Traffickers use blackmails, abuse, and threats to force victims to comply with their wishes in the destination place. So, what are the causes of trafficking? Maybe unemployment, poverty, absence of a social safety, political instability, status of violence against women and children, low risk, high profit, and if it happens, what will be the status of the children or women or men, those who are trafficked? They will be under the control. The movement are restricted, and the false identity or travel documents will be given, and they may not know where they are living, and they may not be knowing their present address also, and there is no access for them to have a contact with their neighbors or with their relatives, and there is no earnings for them to have on their own, and they are not permitted to negotiate with anybody. They work excessively long hours and over long periods, no intervals at all, and no social interaction. Then what will happen to the human beings, those who are trafficked? Why we are talking about this trafficking again and again? The reason is these human beings are tomorrow's human resource. If misused, we are wasting human resource. I told you 40,000. It is 1 million. 1 million people are trafficked every year. That means that 10,000 human resource we are wasting. And it is unused. And sometimes it may be negatively used. So what will happen? Definitely it will have its negative impact on the society. So it is the need of the hour to talk about this trafficking by the academicians, politicians, and those who have the social responsibility. Hence, we are discussing about this. Only discussion will not end this problem. Then we have to find out the solution also. Let us talk about that at the end. Who are trafficked? Actually, the women and children are the key target. People of low income, people with low level of education, young girls running away from people who lack awareness of their legal rights, women and children of varying ages. Trafficked for what? They are trafficked for prostitution, sweet shops as workers, illegal adoption of child, organ transplants, forced marriages, mail order brides, domestic work, construction work, drug trafficking, begging, and dancers in the clubs, for dancing in the club, and for other, there is already I told you, prostitution. So, and for other exploitative, so this is a very bad situation. Every day we are meeting on the street also, but we ignore it. We are very busy with our work. So even sometimes if we see that it is unregistered in our mind, and we do our work. That is also one of the reasons for increasing the human trafficking. So human trafficking and COVID-19 factors create increasingly vulnerable situations that heighten the risk of trafficking, loss of employment, income, or other means of livelihood. This is mainly due to COVID, through changes in demand for goods and services, resulting in economic downturn, poverty, and unemployment are key drivers for trafficking. So because of this COVID, most of the street vendors and shops they keep on the streets, they have closed up. They were unable to sell their products. They have no business. So what will they do? Because of this loss of unemployment, automatically they went for some other business, they may not have any business. So the poverty and the unemployment are the main reasons, maybe the main reasons of trafficking. And the changing family dynamics and great pressure on the family unit result in negative coping mechanisms such as child labor or forced marriage. Once we went to a village for the action-oriented program. So when we have asked a poor family, the mother and the father, when we asked them, why you have many children? They have 5 or 6, 7, 8 children. When we asked them, and these children are they have gone as a child labor. These parents, they have not sent them for any school. When we told them, the school is giving them the uniform, books, chapels, food, egg, milk, and free buses, or even cycles, laptops, everything. When the government is giving all these facilities, why you are sending your children as a child, as a labor? Immediately the parents said, when my child is going for a work, she will bring 200 or 300 rupees to the family. So if you have more number of children, we will get more amount of money per day. It is unimaginable. This is the way the people are thinking. They never bothered about educating their children. They never bothered about giving good food to their children. They want to fill their stomach. They don't have any other ambition in life. So irrespective of their health, that lady is producing more and more number of children. That's one thing. It will tell about the health status of the children and the mother. And again, it will tell about the educational status, economic status, and everything. It has its indirect effect on the nation also. They do not understand all these things. So what they understood is only, if we have many number of children, if they are going for a job, they will bring more money to the family, and we all can have food, not good food. So this is the temperament of the parents. This should be changed. So the coping mechanism is very poor. They are not aware of many things that is prevailing in the society that is essential to make these human beings into human resource. Then the loss of societal support through disruption of education, employment, and other services and networks. There is not only loss of social support, there is no access also for social support for the people, those who are living in hamlets and in the remote villages, and the limited availability and access to services, including health, welfare, and social protection mechanisms. So no one to discuss to tell their problem. That is the condition prevailing in the remote villages. And then trafficked people are also at increased risk of the direct impact of the COVID-19 pandemic because the barriers in accessing healthcare and other services due to lack of identity documents or freedom of movement. Their movement is restricted. They lost their identity and they have no contact with the society. Then how will they get their healthcare facility? And they will be dumped in one room. So if there is no social distancing, definitely there will be a problem. So this COVID is a very big problem for these people. Then lack of a reduced access to COVID-19 preventive measures, including information and personal protective equipments, being more likely to have pre-existing health needs and therefore at higher risk of severe illness. Reduced capacity of frontline responders to identify, refer, and provide support. They can't contact these people even if they have very problem related to COVID, lockdowns and widespread closures, increasing the intensity of exploitation for those confined in an environment to their traffickers. Because it is everything is closed, so they are not able to contact with anybody. That is a very big problem. And then the effects of COVID-19 in our societies, that's the greatest possibility, but that vulnerable people, especially children, can become victims of human trafficking, abuse, and exploitation. I can tell you one example. I experienced this. But because of that is what I told. We will be crossing those children and crossing those women or people. But it will be unregistered in our mind that traffic. Once as women studies people, we should not be only the academicians and researchers. We should be activists also sometimes. Then only we can say women and children. Some 10 or 15 years back, I saw a child doing all household work, very small child, 3 years old child, doing all household work in my neighboring house. When I talked to the old lady in that house, I asked this child, she said, she is my relative, her mother has gone somewhere else, so this baby is in my house. Because she is in my house, she is doing some work. I am not asking her to do that work. As a child, she is playing, like sweeping the house and everything. It's like a play, she is doing all this work and we are not compelling her. I also believed that. After 6 months only, I came to understand that they are not giving any food to the child. And they brought this girl from somewhere to make this girl as a servant, to keep her as a servant, to make her as a servant at home. So immediately when I came to understand that message, I called the police and I saved that girl. Now she may be 20 years. She was admitted in one NGO. And she was doing her studies. She may be good now. I don't know her status today. I have kept her in one very good NGO, and that Christian NGO has taken care of her. They have admitted her in school, and she was doing 10th standard. At that time, I know her. I got a contact with that institution, and she may be now completed. She might have completed her graduation. Or she might have gone for some job. So we have to be an activist sometimes. We can't be only academicians, because as women, we know the pain. We should know the pain of another women, and we should know the pain of the children. The government imposed the lockdown for India's 1.3 billion inhabitants on March 24, 2020. According to the Center for Monitoring India Economy, on 12th May, over 132 million people in India already lost their jobs. Around 75% of them were small traders and daily wage laborers. And when families are economically unstable, the vulnerability of children definitely increases. Human trafficking and COVID-19 in India. At one point during lockdown in India, over the course of 11 days, 92,000 cases of child abuse in the family and in the communities were reported to the government helpline. Again, I am telling you, it is only the reported cases. There are until number of unreported cases. Because still we have the stereotype feeling that we are not supposed to debate these things with the police. So they keep silence. There has also been an increase in cases of forced marriages. According to Indian government's National Crime Record Bureau data, 95% of trafficked persons in India are forced into prostitution. What can you do to help prevent human trafficking? Call your local police department. Report suspected trafficking crimes. Get help by calling the National 24/7 toll-free human trafficking this number. For sexually exploited minors, call the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's hotline at 1800. Contact the Department of Justice Human Trafficking Office at the above number. The recommendations for action. There is a need for systematic data collection and analysis on the impact of COVID-19 on trafficking in persons. There is no country immune to the pandemic, and as COVID-19 does not affect all regions at the same time, experience from one country could be vital to others. We should learn only through experience. So, let us learn from the COVID that has more affected state or country. Then COVID-19 responses must be continuously monitored. Were such measures unintentionally negatively impact vulnerable groups, such as trafficking victims, adjustments must be made to minimize harm and to ensure the needs of such groups are adequately addressed. So, with these recommendations, I would like to add one more point because Asha Madam is here. I would like to insist this. And it can be practiced in the institutions. It may be university, college, or government organization, whatever may be the organization. It is possible if the university or if the institution has got the social responsibility and with the concern towards women. When Bakumati Madam spoke about the women, those who are involved in prostitution, when we rescue those women, they found it is very difficult for them to find a place after that. That was her mention. What I say is, there is nothing wrong in saving these women by giving them some job. We have to give them some job, alternative job. Then only they will not involve themselves in these type of activities. So what jobs we can give them? They can, because for the universities are going for outsourcing the staff members. It may be for computation or for cleaning. So whether it is university, because I am working in university, I am telling you, whether it is university or any other institution, we are going for an outsource of hundreds and hundreds of workers. We will not make use of these women. So if we call them, they will not be having any space to stay. So there is a place, the district agencies have, they may have or they can have a stepping. These women can be placed in the stepping home and they can be there and they can have their work in the institutions. And at night they can come and stay there. They can make payment. They need not make these expenses. These income can be used for those expenses. Otherwise, the institution itself can have a staying homes. All these women can be there and they can do their cooking, carrying, everything they can do, and they can work in the universities and institutions, or in the all educational and companies. They will have crutch. These women can be the mentors in the. These women can be used as mentors in the crutch, and they can look after the children. So we need not pay them anything because we are giving them the food. So like this, we can give them an alternative employment to these women. So they will be, when they are under the custody of any institution, they will be, I think they will be safe. Because in all the institutions, there is an IC. So internal complaints committee, whether it is a permanent employee or a temporary employee, when there is an internal complaints committee, these have every right to make the complaint with evidence. So when it is it is a protective mechanism, these women will be in the safe situation. So as women studies people, we have to think about the problems of the women, the depth of the problem, and if the government is, or anybody, the NGO, whoever it may be, are helping those women, after that, what will happen to them? Because the family may hesitate to keep them back at home. The society will not accept them. We, educated, intellectual, we can give them the protection by having a step-in, home-like step-in. That will be the safest place. We can give them umpteen number of work in the institution, mentors, computational work, cleaning work, work, and even we can give connected tuitions for the working women's children, because all these working women they may find it very difficult to complete the homework of their children after going home. So if these victim women are in the campus, they can conduct a tuition to these children, and thereby the mothers will also be working mothers will also be free, and these victim women will also be getting some jobs. So as intellectuals, as feminists, we have to think not only the recommendations are given by the government, we have to find out the alternative ways to protect these women. This will help every individual women victims, and it will be a very good initiative by the women studies centers of ours in India. So thank you for the opportunity given to me by Asha Madam, Zenita, and Kamalaveni, and I thank Professor Koliraj, the Vice Chancellor of Bardiyar University. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
excellent presentation, ma'am. So you have stick on time, and we have had 2 more persons to speak on, ma'am. We just move on. So I would like to introduce Whitney Archer. I take immense pleasure in introducing our friend Whitney Archer, Associate Director, DCE and Women's Center Director at Oregon State University, USA. Whitney served as an academic record specialist, West Oregon University, Mammoth Office of Register from 2009 to 2011. She also served as an administrative representative at Office of Enrollment Manager, Cottage College, Nevada. Whitney has graduate appointments at Oregon State University, Corvallis, Graduate School Summer Program Assistant, College of Science, Graduate Assistant Academic Advisor, College of Pharmacy, Graduate Assistant Academic Advisor, Women's Center, Assessment Intern, University of Michigan, Anna Bond and Spectrum Center, Summer Intern, July 2012. She also served as a course instructor for Women Worldwide, Reading and Conference, Critical Whiteness and White Identity, Women, Personal and Social Change in University Teaching. She served as a member in National Women's Studies Association, Women's Center Committee, Award Committee, Co-Chair, and Shared Learning, Summit Planning Committee, National Conference on Race and Ethnicity in Higher Education, Whiteness Partnering in Dismantled Racism Causes. She also served as a co-instructor for Fundamentals of Counseling, Translate Student Symposium Seminar, Social Justice Leadership Foundation. She was also a graduate instructor for You Engage, University Exploratory Studies Program, Career Decision Making, College of Pharmacy, Academic Success, Pre-Pharmacy Orientation. Whitney has served as 7 guest lecture presentations, 5 publications, 12 invited presentation workshops, 25 presentations in conference. She has served in the university departments and OSU College Student Service Administration in various positions. She has been a recipient of OSU Search Advocate Professional Development Scholarship and used funds to attend NCORE, OSU Maryland and LGBTQ Service Award. She is a recipient and Illinois State Chapter of PEO Sisterhood. Whitney is also associated with a professional affiliation with American College Personnel Association, National Association of Student Personnel Administrators, National Conference on Race and Ethnicity in Higher Education, and National Women's Studies Association. We are happy to have such a great friend of ours from USA. Welcome you, Whitney.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Audio? Okay. Let me present.
Hi, Whitney. Good morning.
Good morning.
Whitney, I think you need to get introduced to 2 honorable vice chancellors over here. One of our professor is a ex-vice chancellor, and one of our vice chancellor is here, the current vice chancellor of Dr. Ambedkar University. Professor Asha Shukla Madam is here.
It is a pleasure to meet you and be with you all today. Thank you so much for having me. I want to give gratitude to Bardiyar University and Dr. B.R. AMBEDKAR University Social of Social Sciences. I specifically want to thank the Department of Women's Studies at Batyr University, Dr. Zanetta and Dr. Kamalveni. It's super excited, the connections between our campus. I had the chance to meet with them when they traveled to the US to Oregon State University, and we had a chance to co-present together in the fall of 2019 at the National Women's Studies Association conference, and spoke around friendship as the basis for transnational partnership and coalition building, and being able to participate today as a part of that continued building. Also, as a graduate student at OSU, I had the chance to travel to India as a part of a travel seminar that grew out of a partnership between Oregon State University and PSGR, Christian Law College for Women. And it's been a joy to connect and sustain relationships with folks there. I want to give a special hello to Dr. Jayamala, who's on the call with us today. I also want to give a gratitude to my fellow presenters and the important information that's already been shared today. And I'm grateful to be a part of this important conversation. So the image that you see on the screen now is the camas lily, which is indigenous to the lands that I'm joining you from today. And I'd like to begin by offering a land acknowledgement. I am joining you today from what we now call Corvallis, Oregon, USA. It is on the traditional homelands of the Marys River or on Pennafu Band of the Kalapuya people. Following the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855, Kalapuya people were forcibly removed to reservations in Western Oregon. Today, living descendants of these people are a part of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. As we consider the role of colonization in both India and the United States, I invite us to pause and take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together today. I believe that thinking about colonization, thinking about acknowledging the lands, that is deeply connected to the topic at hand today. It's important not to dislocate colonial violences from present-day human trafficking. Indigenous scholar Eve Tuck offers, in settler colonialism, Indigenous erasure and anti-Blackness are endemic. This is why Indigenous trans and cis women in Canada are asking #AmINext, while organizers in the United States have to remind us again and again to #say her name, to bring attention to Black women killed by police, often in custody. Black and brown trans women have been murdered at devastating rates. The violence is all connected. Indigenous theorizations of settler colonialism and Black theorizations of anti-Blackness lay open these networks and connections. So I think about recent uncoverings in North America, right, and connected to the boarding school movement across the US and Canada. In Canada, the first uncovering was 215 unmarked graves at a former boarding school location, and then over 700. Here in the United States on June 22nd, Secretary of Interior Deb Haaland announced an investigation into the more than 365 boarding school sites across the US. This violence is not just something that was a part of history. Indigenous women in the United States are 10 times more likely to be killed than the average national murder rate. Southern Cheyenne descendant Anita Luchessis and the executive director of the Sovereign Body Institute states, quote, "I wouldn't say that we're more vulnerable. I'd say that we're targeted. It's not about us being vulnerable victims. It's about the system being designed to target and marginalize our women," end quote. Globally, Indigenous people endure poverty, illness, human rights abuses at far higher rates than the rest of the global population. They've been ousted from their homelands and territories around the globe. We see this in Indonesia, Uganda, Colombia, Hawaii. And in particular, Indigenous women are at a severe risk of sex trafficking. This quote here really underscores and illustrates all that's already been shared today. Carrie Johnstone, who's the current acting director of the Office to Monitor and Combat Trafficking in Persons, says, if there's one thing we've learned in the last year, it is that trafficking does not stop during a pandemic. The images here underscore things that have already been shared as we think about the elements of human trafficking. So things that we see that fall under that umbrella: forced labor, child soldiers, forced begging, sexual exploitation, forced marriage, the selling of children, removal of organs. Right? And in the US context particularly, human trafficking isn't a topic most people think about. For many people in the US, human trafficking evokes images of women and children being forcibly taken and sold into sexual slavery by strangers, or people in locked rooms or vehicles far away from home. These images, however, don't evoke the actual reality of most cases of sex and labor trafficking. Human trafficking is typically not so simple or salacious. Most victims are not kidnapped by strangers. Instead, it is often their neighbors, relatives, romantic partners, or other acquaintances who exploit them. Right? We've heard this already highlighted today. Traffickers use fraudulent, psychological, manipulative, or coercive recruitment methods, so they don't necessarily even kidnap or have to physically restrain their victims. Again, victims often know their trafficker through a grooming process. And many of those who were targeted are already from vulnerable populations and have unmet needs that a trafficker promises to fulfill. Some of these particularly vulnerable populations include young people and minors, those people living in poverty, those with a history of drug or alcohol abuse, victims of physical, sexual, or emotional abuse from childhood, and a history of running away. Based on data collected from 148 countries, the United Nations Office of Drug and Crime was able to record 534 different trafficking flows around the globe. Though it's important to highlight that victims are typically trafficked within a geographically close area. For example, girls are recruited from a suburban area and exploited right there. Sex trafficking in particular is a growing crime. It's estimated that globally it's a $99 billion industry. And mostly targeted are Black and Indigenous women who are victimized at the highest rate. Again, to get the scope of this, in 2016 it was estimated that 40 million people around the globe were victims of trafficking, including forced labor, debt bondage, forced marriage, these other things that you see highlighted on the image on the screen. Female victims continue to be the primary targets for trafficking. For every 10 victims detected globally in 2018, about 5 of them were adult women and 2 were young girls. Around 20% of human trafficking victims are men and 15% were young boys. Overall, 50% of victims who are trafficked for sexual exploitation, 38% for forced labor, and 6% were subject to forced criminal activity, and much smaller numbers for the forced marriages, organ removal, and other purposes. And all of this has been compounded during the COVID-19 pandemic. The coronavirus has created an even greater disadvantage for victims of human trafficking. The pandemic has increased the number of people at risk for human trafficking, and traffickers have taken advantage of the social and economic crisis that was created by this global pandemic. The pandemic has exacerbated and brought to the forefront the systemic and deeply entrenched economic and societal inequalities that are among the root causes of trafficking. Again, we see that it has disproportionately affected marginalized communities and those that are most at risk of exploitation. This includes undocumented migrants, seasonal workers, who were already in precarious living conditions before the pandemic, and this has led to greater vulnerability. The number of individuals, as I've shared, grew who were at risk of trafficking grew during the pandemic, and so did the conditions under which traffickers thrive. Traffickers have capitalized on this And one of those things is that there's been shifting priorities, right? So we see government, law enforcement, that they have shifted priorities to address the COVID pandemic, allowing the human trafficking pandemic to thrive. We see this with the diverting of resources away from trafficking efforts. Prior to the pandemic, many trafficking survivors had an entry point to services through the healthcare system. Often it was during a visit that they were identified as a victim and then connected with mental health services and other direct services. And we see that that's not happening now, right? Adaptive strategies during the pandemic, such as the increased use of telehealth services, have not worked for trafficking survivors as they have with other populations. Some trafficked youth have lifestyles that make it difficult to schedule telehealth appointments. Also, living arrangements might not permit the privacy or confidentiality appropriate for patient care. We think around the increased domestic violence, right? If someone is living with their abuser, their access to these services may be really restricted. And they may lack the necessarily technology, computer equipment, Wi-Fi for telehealth visits, and we see this then compounded where there's language and cultural barriers. Again, speaking around this increase of domestic violence, it means many victims of trafficking are living in the violent situations with no way to escape day to day. We've also seen that there is an increase in the sexual exploitation of children. While school closures cause risks to benefit them, cause risks that vulnerable children, right? And children are spending more time online, and this comes with an increased risk of grooming. We heard that spoken about already. All right, and that again, similar to like where healthcare workers were a point to recognizing those who were being trafficked, we see that with school teachers who now aren't having that face-to-face time as an intervention. Result of this is that the National Center here in the U.S. for Missing and Exploited Children noted an increase from 2 million to 4.2 million of reports of online exploitation between March and April 2020. So as we see these points that I've made, as well as those that have been made by others this morning, really illustrate the way in which human trafficking has really exploded during the pandemic. What are considerations as we move forward, right? The impact of trafficking on survivors is significant. The virus has disrupted their lives, support networks. Some have faced increased financial stress, food insecurity, interpersonal violence. And then we have the grief of loss of loved ones, right? Like this is all happening while folks are dying of COVID. In response to these conditions, it's essential we develop tailored strategies to meet the needs of those most at risk of being exploited or trafficked. So these recommendations come from the U.S. State Department report on trafficking in persons. And they offer that drawing on lessons learned in the pandemic response thus far, there's 4 main considerations that aim to mitigate the impacts of the crises and guide the path forward of the anti-trafficking community. Right, so first what we see here is the value of collaboration between anti-trafficking actors, right? So governments should continue to work with neighboring governments, with NGOs across borders to address trafficking issues, and we need to build and sustain these collaborative efforts. Service providers should continue to share information and support identifying victims and vulnerable populations. The second is that we need to incorporate anti-trafficking efforts into existing responses to other contexts, such as humanitarian settings, right? And so we think around right now those who are giving out vaccines, right? How can we train healthcare workers to be able to notice patterns of violence and be able to get victims into direct service support to leave violent situations? Next, we need to see the importance of proactive versus reactive responses. And so this is crucial for combating human trafficking, both in and outside of the pandemic context, right? We need to ensure that we are proactive in giving information and having the context to be addressed. And the fourth is that we need to have the application of equity-based approaches, right? We know the disproportionate rates of marginalized communities experiencing trafficking, right? So applying an equity-based lens invites us, as I did in the beginning, to think through what are the legacies of ongoing colonization and the violence there? How is that connected to trafficking today, right? How do we see this compounded by racism, classism? We see that young LGBTQ populations in the US are trafficked at a higher rate. We must have an equity-based lens to approach and address this growing crisis globally. So these are just 4 considerations that I offer for us to continue to think through as we address human trafficking. I want to thank you for, again, the opportunity to be with you this morning and to just have the already robust conversation and, again, to be in relationship with those I've had the chance to meet and connect with and look forward to further transnational collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we have 3 more minutes. If Asha ma'am is here and Nimegli ma'am is here, ma'am, you can just get introduced because they are joining us for the first time with the collaboration. Please, ma'am. Ma'am, your mic is not on, ma'am.
Yeah. Dear Whitney, welcome from India. And in near future, I have heard a lot from Kamla Beni about you. And near future, definitely yes, we will do something very academic and very research oriented. We will discuss the issue in collaboration also.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you and to meet you today.
Oh, thank you. I'm very happy to see you because I have heard a lot of you.
Thank you, ma'am. Manimegla, ma'am, are you here, ma'am? Actually, ma'am also want to get introduced. Okay, I think ma'am is not here. So thank you so much, Whitney. Thank you for accepting our invitation and being on time over here. We are really, you made this session very interesting. And thank you so much. Tomorrow morning, Professor Susan is joining us.
Yeah, that's excellent. Tell Susan hello from me.
Yeah, we'll definitely share. And thank you so much, Professor Whitney. Yeah. So we'll move on to the next session.
Yeah, thanks from me too, Whitney. Take care. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. So now I would like to talk about Dr. Jaya Pukan and introduce her. She is having an experience of over 15 years as a faculty at Women's Studies Department, Bargatullah University, Bhopal. She is UGC NET qualified and did her graduation, Masters and MPhil from University of Delhi with specialization in social anthropology and awarded PhD in sociology. She was awarded with a scholarship under National Scholarship Scheme by Government of India, Ministry of Human Resource Development for postgraduate study. She has also given her service to reputed institutions of India like IIFM, Bhopal and Indian Institute of Human Behavior and Allied Science, New Delhi. Many research papers, 5 books on women-related issues has been published to her credit. She has been associated with curriculum development of women's studies and research projects conducted by Women's Studies Department on gender studies and also has coordinated many seminars, workshops and gender sensitization programs. Her research interests include gender and development, gender and education, anthropology of gender, rights of women, gender sensitization, violence against women, gender and forestry, etc. On the occasion of International Women's Day in 2017, she was honored with the summon by Urghan Uthan Abam Kalya Santam, Bhopal, for her contribution in the field of education, women's studies. I think I would have read something wrong on Hindi, but excuse me for that. And I welcome Jaya Pukan, ma'am. Welcome you, ma'am. Jaya, ma'am.
Thank you, Kumlamini ma'am. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank Honorary Chancellor of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University of Social Sciences, MOU, Professor Asha Shukla ma'am, and the Vice Chancellor of Bhattiyar University, Head of the Department of Women Studies, Bhattiyar University, Janita ma'am, and my friend and colleague Kamla Veni ma'am. Based I would like to thank all of them for giving me this opportunity. Based on the presentation made by the eminent speaker in the today's webinar by Dr. A.M. Nair sir, Humphrey ma'am, Mani Meklai ma'am, Irene George, Whitney Archer, and in the concluding session, I would like to highlight upon some of the important issues related to human trafficking and areas on which we can work further. I'll discuss it on the basis of the presentation made in the webinar. The phenomenon of trafficking has increased significantly over the years, but both globally and in South Asian countries. People from most disadvantaged socioeconomic strata are particularly vulnerable to forced or bonded labor and sex trafficking. Trafficking clearly violates the fundamental rights to life and dignity. And trafficking is a multi-dimensional problem. We have discussed its different dimensions in today's webinar. It includes a whole range of economic, social, and cultural issues which are varied, region-wise, and highly complex. One thing more, we should not restrict our understanding of the causes of trafficking to poverty only. Further, issues like globalization, deforestation, natural disaster, and now pandemic are other prominent causes depending on the situation and the geographical positioning of the region. Factors like globalization, pornography, refugee crisis, armed conflicts, or even pandemic crisis has led to a situation where cases of trafficking for various purposes, and it has posed a challenge for prevention of problem even with best of laws. In pandemic situation, various reports highlighted that traffickers particularly target those vulnerable, such as migrants and people without jobs, and children also. As per UNODC, identification of trafficking victim is difficult even under normal circumstances, and there are fears that COVID-19 is making the task even more difficult. Due to increasing unemployment, poverty, uncertainty, lack of livelihood, cases of trafficking increased during the pandemic. All our speakers, Nair sir, Bhamti ma'am, and Mani Meklai ma'am, and others, Irene, they highlighted the issues in detail. And now I would like to highlight some of the issues which need to be addressed and the areas on which we can work further. One thing which came out during our discussion is that there is a scarcity of actual data on human trafficking. So evidence-based research is required. Further, action, evaluation, and replication of intervention is also required. There is a need to increase the interaction between government and non-government agencies in enforcing the current policies. Such interaction is important as the understanding, interpretation, implementation of the policy is crucial to provide strong legal base to work for rescue and rehabilitation of survivors of trafficking. So, trafficking through cyberspace and cybercrime needs special attention. Coordination between various government departments, academic universities, NGO, media, and society is a must. The human rights approach would give better voice to victims and vulnerable populations in drafting policies and programs that affect their lives, and it holds government more accountable when rights are violated. Further, proper training and awareness on the issue of human trafficking should be provided to the police personnel to identify and register the cases of human trafficking. Sensitization of police and other stakeholders is also required to address the issue. These were the suggestions also made by our eminent speakers. Role of community policing in combating human trafficking should be given emphasis in India as the community policing approach focuses on developing skills and strategies that can directly support anti-trafficking efforts with effective communication with the public, fear reduction, and community mobilization. I would like to highlight the areas of intervention. that we as an academic institution can do. First is mobilization and awareness. There is a need to create awareness regarding human trafficking among state, central government officials, universities, and all potential stakeholders. There is a need to start human trafficking clubs and in college and university. Professor Nair sir suggested this during our interaction in the seminar, previous seminar. So we can start anti-trafficking unit clubs interventions, and sensitization of media is another aspect. And one more intervention we can make is to develop a directory of all agencies working on the issues of human trafficking for better networking. There are also possibilities of research in this area can be taken for research scale up. Successful micro level research studies by universities like topic issues on issues of sexual labor exploitation, forced labor exploitation, and we can also conduct impact study of anti-human trafficking units, which NASCO highlights. And there is a need assessment study of training also. And further, we can prepare as an academic institution. We can prepare a module on human trafficking and also need for awareness for students on cyber crime, for which we can also prepare modules. And the training curriculum should cover wide range of problems like child soldiers, child hackers, engaging survivors as resource persons after informed consent, which could result in positive change in behavior of police after ending training. And also rehabilitation aspect is very important. Ma'am Bhamti ma'am and Mani Miklai ma'am spoke on this. There is a need for railway police force sensitization. Railway police force should also be approached, and documentation of cross-border experience can also be done. MOU by university with police to deal with the problem can be done, and issues of cyber crime needs to be addressed. So these were my submission, and I have tried to summarize the discussion and deliberations made in today's webinar, and we are looking forward to work further in this area. And in the end, I will also like to request all our resource persons to submit their presentation and lectures earliest for report and edited book. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now that we have come to the end of the session, I would like to take this opportunity to propose the vote of thanks. First and foremost, I extend my heartfelt thanks to our Honorable Vice Chancellors, respected Madam Asha Shukla, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University of Social Science, Mahoo, Madhya Pradesh, respected Professor Dr. P. Kaliraj Sir, Vice Chancellor, AMBEDKAR University, Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu, who are the backbone of organizing this seminar. I extend my wholehearted thanks to the distinguished keynote speakers, Dr. P.M. Nair Sir, Indian Police Foundation, IPS, former nodal officer anti-trafficking, whose speech inspired the audience. With all my due respect, I also thank Bhamati Balasubramaniam Madam, retired IAS officer and former Central Administrative Tribunal Chennai branch, who inspired the audience. I extend my special thanks to Dr. K. Manimegale Madam, former Vice Chancellor, Mother Teresa Women's University, current Director and Head Women's Studies Department, Ayagappa University, Karikudi, who created an impact among the audience. I congratulate and thank our young speaker, Irene George, Emeritus Institute of Banking and Finance, United Arab Emirates, who made her time so interesting to our participant friends. I extend my fullest thanks and wishes to Whitney Archer, Associate Director, DCE, Women and Gender Center Director, Oregon State University, Corvallis, USA, who readily accepted our invitation and made her time interesting with our audience. I thank Dr. Jaya Pukan, Women's Studies Department, Bagatullah University, Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh, and Dr. Manoj Gupta, who worked along with me to make this program a grand success. I thank our program coordinator, Dr. Rupa Gunasilan, Dean, Social Science, Bharatiyar University, who took time to be with us. I thank Dr. Zenita Rosalyn Madam and Director, Department of Women's Studies, Bharatiyar University, Coimbatore, who is always supportive in conducting the programs. Thank you, ma'am. I thank the administrative coordinators of AMBEDKAR University and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University of Social Science, Maho, Madhya Pradesh. And I thank all the professor friends from AMBEDKAR University and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University and participant friends around the world. It was a great opportunity to meet you all on this virtual platform, and I extend my heartfelt thanks to each one of you. It was great meeting you all over here, and thank you for being with us. We also welcome you for the tomorrow's webinar, which is going to happen tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. It would complete by 11:30, and so I welcome each one of you. I humbly thank the professors from Sociology Department, Professor Sambat sir, Professor Gunasekharan sir from Sociology, who took the time off to participate in this webinar. Thank you one and all once again. Thank you all.
And thank you to Kamala Beni.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Enjoy.
Yes,
It's your show. Under the leadership of Professor Janetta. It's your show.
Thank
Very
you.
grand success.
Thank you
so much for the opportunity, ma'am. We are learning yet.
Yes.
Thank you.
We are on one platform.
Yes,
we are
ma'am.
together.
Yes.
Thank you.
So much, ma'am.
Yes.
All the participants, please join us by 9 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Good night. Good night.
Thank you, ma'am.